I'm up here thinking. I am actually thinking quite a bit. So, we know that there is a fundamental, universal kind of biological response mechanism in fear or pain, or pain, really. That's all that is. So, if any animal has a self-preservation mechanism, it usually relies on kind of a fear-ish kind of response to negative stimuli like pain. Pain is usually something that prevents loss of limbs or harm to the body, which means that there must also be a motivation in most animals. That motivation is usually to feed, to grow, to sustain itself. So I just walked in from the cold because I just had a walk with Dad's dog. I am a strong proponent that we don't have what we traditionally know as free will. Robert Sapolsky agrees. And there are some arguments about Robert Sapolsky's like kind of perspective on punitive guidance and, prison sentences and criminal records, or even blaming the individual for criminal activity instead of actually examining the systems that they were raised in, or the system that collectively kind of like manages all of society. But we're not going to get into that right now. If we think about the fact that if we look at this in a binary sense, with the yes and no concept, or the please and thank you concept. So Marshall Rosenberg says, all anyone's ever saying is please or thank you. Please hear me. Thank you for hearing me, in the simplest of terms. We could apply please to please no or please yes. So please, I'd like to do this because it's life-serving and I was conditioned to understand that this is beneficial for me and whoever I care about. Or please no, you're hurting me. And hurting me could be like, oh, you're burdening me financially. You're causing me pain. You're causing me stress. Please no because it's irritating or whatever. So if we think about the simplest terms of biological mechanisms, you've got yes and no. No is freeze up or run away. Yes is, oh, that feels really good. Or that's lovely. Or that works. I feel comfortable when that happens. Which means that if a system is too heavily against itself, it's going to have a lot of no. And there's going to be a lot of please, so people are going to want to be heard in that no, through confusion or misunderstanding or kind of conditioned bigotries or oppositions to certain concepts. And I think that's a state of life that we're kind of like dealing with right now, because what we kind of perceive to be a system of freedom is very clearly, when you examine a great many of its intricate details and complexities, more of a system that is reliant on people kind of like doing what they do to keep it mechanically functioning, and still having some semblance of a life usually built on like capitalism and basically consumerism that keeps us happy or satisfied or whatever. And of course, you can bring the idea of substances in, like substances are comforting or calming or at the very least numbing and preventing people from like realizing or recognizing the suffering that they're like dealing with, or not wanting to think about the suffering because they've thought themselves into spirals because they can't find a way out of it or whatever. So you turn to substances, be that alcohol or weed or whatever, to comfort you. Even someone who smokes a cigarette is probably trying to regulate their nervous system, because the cigarette probably gives them a pretty consistent sensation in their body, and that can soothe the stress from a workday that really shouldn't be a burden for them, in that it shouldn't be burdened upon them. Like we shouldn't deal with this kind of stuff. Like we shouldn't be forced to deal with 5-day work weeks, 8 hours a day, when we have to sleep like 6 to 8 hours a night, generally every night, which is like, it's a lot of our life. But anyway, this is a long kind of way of roundabout saying, I think I understand how Marshall Rosenberg felt about the most satisfying thing being to contribute to someone's life. Because overall, I think I can justify how and why, mechanically, rationally, we feel better when we do something that soothes another person's nervous system, when we do something that allows us to feel pleasure chemicals, when we feel happy or joyful or whatever, when anybody else feels happy or joyful around us. Yeah, that's a collective communal thing. I think that's why like festivals and concerts and everything feel amazing. And even church feels amazing because you're all on the same wavelength. You're kind of listening to the same thing. Although technically it's necessarily like you have to be fully conditioned towards or like fully believing in, like you've got to be fundamentally like convinced that being at church is a truly holy and liberating or wonderful, beautiful experience. And it is technically because, you know, there are people around, you know, like any communal gathering of calm, pleasant people is going to feel good. It's going to feel co-regulating and soothing. So even someone like myself, who is, this is going to be very, very problematic for some people, but it's true. I am kind of an antinatalist. I think we have 8.3 billion people on this planet, and we still haven't sorted out what consumption level is appropriate for the resources on our planet. And I think that we are constantly eating ourselves, consuming ourselves, and destroying ourselves into not being able to turn back. Like, we can't fix a system that is built on balance, such as our ecosystem. So I am kind of an antinatalist. Not fundamentally, but I believe at this time in, you know, societal evolution, I think it's a very important thing to dedicate ourselves to understanding and rebalancing resources instead of adding more mouths to feed. I believe that we should be devoting ourselves to, and I know I'm using the word should. I shouldn't should on anybody, but I'm shooting on you. I believe that we should be focused on collective education and not kind of burning books or, you know, telling people they don't need an education. It's like, no, the best education is an education. It's a necessarily uniform education and framework to kind of like walk through life with a guaranteed set of understandings that allows us to communicate with one another. I think that is a fundamentally necessary thing. Now, creative minds would be like, oh man, it's the school of life is the best teacher. Like, is it though? I mean, for you, probably, if you have a certain level of comfort and you're willing to kind of explore enough, the school of life is wonderful if you go places and you learn from as many places as possible to create a sort of collective gestalt consciousness of the entire world that you can actually apply to your individual slice of it. But I personally believe that in order to balance with the system and also the individuals in it, to have a somewhat uniform educational framework is necessary. And I also think that communication frameworks are kind of a necessary way to do that. I am child-free. I don't want to have children, but I do believe that every single one of us and every single animal and biological being deserves love, care, and nourishment that allows for all of its needs to be met, as in if it needs a certain level of autonomy to develop consciousness or awareness or self-actualization in some capacity, then all of those needs should be met. Every one of them. There is no like hierarchy of needs. Maslow himself, like, he went back on his own understanding. Like, he created the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And in his later years, you can read in his works, like, he was really upset with how he decided that. And he thought there would be a better way to lay those out. Abraham Max-Neef kind of covered that, and also the Center for Nonviolent Communication and NVC Academy and Yvette Erasmus and Yoram Mosensen and I love Marian Van Dyke. I love her name. I love how it's spelled. Why was I unable to think of her name? Anyway, cup of empathy. Lots of people have created lists of human needs that are all fundamentally equal, and yes, equal based on resources. So with access to resources, financial resources, all of those needs are equal. There are certain needs that might be prioritized, like literal survival. If you don't have many resources, eat as much as you can. Steal food if you have to. If you don't have the resources for it, eat and stay warm. That's it. That's all you're going to do. You're going to be miserable, you're going to be tense, you're going to be terrified, but that's all. And that is entirely based on capitalistic resources. So when someone says, like, yeah, certain needs are more important, what they're really saying is you're not really worth fully devoting ourselves to, or you're not really worth fully investing in, so we're going to tell you to chill the fuck out. You don't need that stuff. You do. Everyone does. Every being on this planet still needs all of those needs to be met. But because of the system that we have built in capitalism and consumerism, there are certain needs that are going to be sacrificed, right? Like, you don't necessarily need a vacation. You don't need to meet your need for exploration. People are going to be like, oh, you don't necessarily need transportation because what are you going to do? It's like, you do need transportation because that's actually a pretty primary need for being able to reach out and connect with people and to collaborate and have a community consciousness and to meet your social needs and all that kind of thing. And our social needs are actually one of the most fundamentally necessary things to meet. So even if you're just eating or whatever and staying warm, like, you still need to connect with people. Homeless people gather in droves in like communities because it's still necessary. Like, it's necessary to meet your social needs. Even if you have nothing else. And honestly, the collaboration that can happen in those spaces to earn a little bit of money collectively is probably better than what you can think of on your own. But I was thinking, and I know that I've already wasted 13 minutes of your time, but I was thinking, if there is no other purpose for life, if we have no free will, if we are just biological beings, and we are all pieces of the same biological puzzle, if we are all human and we all have the same general makeup, then we are compatible with this particular devotion, the meaning of life, if you will. Then the meaning of life is literally just to comfort one another. The meaning of life is to make life easier for one another. The meaning of life is to give our spare energy when our individual needs are met. It is to devote our spare energy to caring for one another and soothing one another and healing one another and educating one another and offering something to one another. So share our stories, share our education, share our understanding, share our gifts, our art, our expression, our love, our feelings, all of that stuff. I always think it's really interesting that the system celebrates guns but censors sex. Like, kids play with guns, but they're not allowed to talk about sex until they're much, much older. And even then, people can be shamed and hidden for being sexual or whatever. It's a point of confusion and intentional censorship, which bothers me. But it also makes sense, because if the system is designed for technical progress and advancement, then systemically, in terms of technological advancement and architectural advancement and societal mechanical growth, based on resources, again, coming back to capitalism, then it does make sense to celebrate guns, because guns are a thing that stimulate in the most negative ways, because guns become this unpredictable thing, this scary, dangerous, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen because this danger is bad. It's going to happen to me, or I'm going to make it happen, or whatever. That encourages people. It keeps them on their feet. It keeps them on their toes. It conditions a sense of fear, concern, frustration, anger. And those are motivations. Those drive people towards something. Even if it's like, oh, I got to earn more to get another gun, or I got to earn more to make to buy an alarm system, or have bars on my windows, or have a safer car, or whatever. Like in case of zombie apocalypse, I don't know. But that's a motivation thing. Whereas sex itself, sex is kind of like an unpredictably soothing mechanism. Sex is satisfaction, it's relaxation, it's comfort. It is peace in the present moment when you have it, right? Like you want to be or you don't want to be anywhere else. You're happy, content, and you're in a beautiful experience that is essentially a drug, but it's an unregistered drug. Like you can't sell sex. You can sell stuff for it. Like you can sell condoms. Some people don't necessarily want condoms to be sold, but you can sell pleasure products. You can sell toys, all that kind of thing. And toys are fun, so they enhance the sex. And toys are shamed a lot. Like they really are. Can't imagine the conversations I've had with people that literally like denied the idea of wanting to use toys in the bedroom and sex and all that kind of stuff. So again, all that shame around sex. Instead of a fundamentally necessary education around sex, we kind of lump it into a category of taboo. And there are certain levels of taboo. We create a hierarchy of taboos. But there's no hierarchy of the danger of guns. There's just guns. And yeah, I'm sure there are various levels of like lethality. But like there's just guns and everyone's terrified of it. It doesn't matter if you get shot once or twice. Like you can be more scared of something that, can unload 30 guns or 30 bullets into you in 2 seconds or whatever. I'd be more scared of that. Actually, I wouldn't necessarily be more scared of that, because if I can just get like completely pounded with 30 bullets in like 20 seconds or even just 5 seconds, like I'm going to die faster. And it's like, how comforting is that, right? Like, don't bother with me. I've got a bunch of bullets in me. I'm fine. You get shot once, it's just going to suck, right? But like, I digress. That's getting into the personal perspective thing. From a rational perspective, I guess I'm coming to the conclusion that all we are here for is to cause some level of comfort for one another. And if that's like finding a partner to guarantee peace in your life, or some encouragement or growth or whatever, because that's an interesting thing, is that every single conversation is a collaborative experience. Sex is a collaborative experience. And we create these niches of collaborative experiences. Like we create teams and things like that. They can also be called countries. Like everybody's got these guns, man. We got people with all these other guns, and we got to show that our guns are better. So we create collaborative teams that are separate. We other people. The othering experience, which is to make enemies of people. We do that inside of countries. We make enemies of, trans, and we make enemies of conservatives, and we make enemies of Democrats, and we make enemies of porn sites and people who, experience taboo, deviant behaviors or whatever. We make enemies of anything that isn't what we're familiar with or what we've been conditioned to believe is right. And the righting and wronging thing is another conversation to have, because I'm at 20 minutes right now. But I could probably keep going. Right and wrong are stupid simple concepts applied to arbitrary moral concepts. What is right generally is considered life-serving, life-affirming. And we can look at all of life as something that we could see with complex consciousness and adapt our understanding of who would be served by our actions. Or we can be told that certain things are right. We could also observe who might be harmed by our actions or our inaction. Or we can just say that certain things are wrong. If we looked at things from the collective understanding of what is life-serving, life-affirming, and also life-harming, then generally, with enough of an awareness of our environment and the collective experience and the people around us and things like that, we're going to understand, what's actually going to be good for people and good for us. But we also wouldn't be willing to hurt people if we were taught on that level. We're taught right and wrong because right and wrong are guiding principles. Good and bad are guiding principles. If we only understood what helped people, what guided people, what helped people feel safe, loved, and connected, human, and fulfilled, and we were also able to meet all the needs that truly fulfilled us with the resources available, then none of us would actually try to hurt people. We would have no reason to hurt people. All of our needs would be met. We would have access to all the resources. And Jacques Fresco believed in a resource-based economy, right? It didn't need capitalism. If you needed a bike, in his terms, if you need a bike, go down to the library. If you need a camera, go down to the library. Everybody uses whatever. And then, we've got these words that say that capitalism, or we've got capitalistic, I don't want to say propaganda, but it kind of is propaganda. Capitalism is system-serving. Communism is human. It's community-serving by its nature, and that's a good thing. Jacques Fresco wasn't thinking about communism. He was thinking about universal consciousness, where every country made every other country aware of all of its resources, and we kind of just shared so that we would understand that kind of stuff. And it's like, I need this. It's like asking your neighbor for a cup of sugar or whatever. And you wouldn't be thinking about what's wrong. You would just know that you need something, and then you would ask for it, and you would have it. And those resources would be kind of like allocated. No have-nots would exist because it would just all exist. But then I also think about the fact that Rome kind of devolved into sexual depravity at its highest peak. And maybe all that kind of stuff happened because everyone's needs were met, but they weren't prepared. So technically, if we create enemies of one another, then society, from a mechanical perspective, evolves. Technology grows because we constantly try to understand things. If we're all lost in like sex and love and peace and all that kind of thing, then we're comfortable enough to not want things to change. But if the system gives us reasons to fight something or to push for something, then our brains are constantly bouncing around with ideas for solutions. You don't have anything to solve if you're all just at peace, placid, comfortable, satisfied. So there's a certain balance that is both good and bad. And again, bad can't exist without good, and good can't exist without bad. I think that binary is necessary for systemic progress. Sorry, I got a low battery notification. But there's a certain point at which it goes too far, where people get hurt, where people suffer, where people are traumatized, and the experience of trauma significantly impacts their life, where people get scapegoated and pushed away so that everyone else's suffering can be ignored. And sure, one scapegoat can feed a family of half a dozen to a dozen people. But then in that particular system, the scapegoat needs to remain with them because they can't blame someone that's never there. It's interesting to me that we are willing to walk blindly through this life, trusting that suffering is okay because it's not immediately happening to us. There are many people who are conditioned through their entire life to believe that they'll have access to resources, and their entire life and their consciousness and their motivations, their interests, their passions, their understandings are built on a resourceful world or a resourceful worldview. And then, of course, they can be shoved away. Like me in particular, I always had everything that I needed, and I had access to my computers and my photo gear and my art supplies and all that kind of stuff, and I was encouraged with it, and it was endless supply of all that stuff to stay motivated and all that. I understand that most of the things that I have a consciousness of and the understanding that I have requires significantly expensive gear. In just about every interest that I've ever had. So not having something becomes very difficult. My brain is constantly dancing with, like, how am I supposed to stay relevant and how am I supposed to connect with people that have everything they could possibly ever need? And I still don't have. But I do crave community. We all do. Every one of us craves community. And I totally empathize with why a lot of communities will gather around drugs and alcohol, because drugs and alcohol, they're just there. It's like going around a watering hole, except it's drugs and alcohol. You got people around you. They're not going to be the healthiest of relationships, but they're people. I spend a lot of time questioning why I exist. I also spend a lot of time rationalizing why I would benefit the world or myself not existing. I mean, heck, if I didn't exist, I wouldn't be eating food. I wouldn't be taking up this space. This place would be offered to somebody else, and they might use it for whatever they need it for, and then they would make progress, or they'd be happy, and they would probably have some community service or community purpose or whatever. I'd like to have a community purpose. I would like to volunteer and offer my time, but I don't have transportation resources, and I don't have like the necessary. I've got a camera with a 28 millimeter and a 50 millimeter lens, but those are not like systemically serving lenses. They're kind of like, I've got a camera, I'm going to play with it kind of lenses. 50 millimeter can be a wonderfully useful lens. It can be. it's not always the greatest. It can't be used for creating like narrative consciousness or narrative stories and things like that, which is why I'm thinking, I'm probably going to pick up a small 32 bit, recording interface that I can carry around or put on me or put on my camera, and I can do like photos of certain events with like audio that I'll be able to lift up. I saw a pretty sick video by Ben Staley, a couple of them actually. He was recording concerts with the 32-bit, and he was getting photos that he would play the music over. So like the music is playing for 15 seconds or 10 seconds with a still photo or a series of still photos, and it was a really awesome kind of narrative thing. So I've been thinking about that kind of thing for things like protests and whatnot. Not necessarily to stand up for something, but to let people be aware of the fact that it's happening. We become numb and kind of like compartmentalized as a species in our communal settings and stuff. We create these tiny little nuclear families that never really experience the world outside, and we're constantly terrified that our kids are going to get hurt or they're going to learn something we don't want them to learn about and all that kind of stuff, which, don't get me started on that paranoia. That's fucking insane. Kids need to learn things you don't expect. You need to be able to spend time with them to explain those things. Like every single concept that a child has within their mind, like let them entertain it, let them understand it. Don't shame them for it. And don't tell them that they're going to break something. Don't ever tell them they're going to break something. And if they do break something, you sit and you're like, oh yeah, no, how'd that happen? Oh yeah. And let them figure it out. Like, oh, well, I guess I should have held on better, or I should have focused on this, or maybe I should get stronger so I could do that kind of lift, or whatever. Don't shame them. Don't tell them that they're going to like break something, or that they did break something or do break something. Like, don't make your kid's nervous system turn into a steaming pile of chaotic shit constantly. Don't ever remind them that they've broken something or hurt something. Instead, encourage them not to. Like, oh, come up with reasons. Maybe hold it better, get stronger, pay more attention. And don't bring it up at random ass fucking times. Sorry, that's a personal thing. Anyway. If your kid is constantly trying to make you happy, to satisfy you, which is necessary, because in order to be fed and to get their toys and their resources and stuff, they need to satisfy you. Into their mind, that's what they believe. So allow them to start understanding themselves and to start understanding you, to connect with you, to develop their own personality and then love you. I personally don't think children should be born until we have like about 3 billion less people, or we all collectively agree on how we're not going to destroy the world anymore, or we don't need 6 boats, 6 cars, 6 mansions, and whatever. Like, all of us would be fine in this kind of shared housing situation. Like, I have a townhouse. There are 4 units here, and each unit has 2 bedrooms and a basement. This is a perfect little space for anyone to do anything. And if I wanted to reach out to a community, I'd go to a community that has access to resources that allows me to kind of like expand beyond what I have here. I don't need to individually own everything. Although I do know that there are a lot less resources than what I actually care to be playing with. So I do collect things that I can benefit from. I limit my meaningless consumerism and kind of have a couple of toys that remind me of my interests and things. And, I've got a big old astromech in the basement that I've got to work on. So I got to collect paints. And once I have my workbench here, I can do that kind of stuff. And I keep collecting, photo and video gear, because there's rare photo and video gear access around here. But I try to minimize my footprint. And I think that we are encouraged so much to take, shame. And then the funny thing is, we take everything and then we shame people for having nothing. I can't personally make progress. I'm on disability and under guardianship. I don't know enough about the legal system to handle that kind of situation gracefully, so I am desperately trying to figure out how to do whatever I got to do. But I fundamentally believe necessarily in community and support, and that we all need a framework of communal support and loving friends and, relationships and things to have a chance in life. So I'm not even willing to step out of this situation until I guarantee that I have those resources. And the thing that really bothers me is like, this is an ageless thing. This has nothing to do with like me being 38. I'll never be able to earn. Like, I'm not an independent individual. And I think the thing that's bothering me is like my family has a bunch of shit. Like, we've got a fucking lake house. We've got 2 jet skis that go between the lake house and Lake St. Clair. We've got a 32-foot boat in a marina on Lake St. Clair, and we've got a 21-foot or a 20-foot boat at the lake house. And we've got, sports cars and classic cars and fancy new cars and an old car that hasn't been worked on, which is 4 cars between one person. And this townhouse, I guess. My father owns this townhouse. I don't technically own it, but I rent it for $800 a month plus utilities, which are about $200 at this point. And I truly believe that we're a beautiful species, and we're all capable of wonderful, amazing things. And don't get me started on the absolutely fucking spectacular things that my sister's kids have. Like, dude, my brother-in-law in the Star Wars fucking basement. I'm constantly trying to fucking navigate the idea of me being a Star Wars fan or like being worthy of him. And I think honestly, photography and videography are a great way to do that. I'd love to get into cosplay. I can't necessarily afford it. I follow an eco cosplayer, which is freaking awesome. But I'd love to take photos of the cosplay or have a couple and not necessarily make a huge impact on my footprint. I used to be wicked into computers and understanding like how and why certain specs make photo work, video work, and gaming easier or whatever. But I got a friend that's really into that kind of stuff, so it's a lot easier for that. I don't want a pickup truck that does all the things. I just want like an efficient vehicle that I can put my stuff in, like a hatchback or maybe a small SUV with a decent fuel efficiency. I don't want to tow things. I don't want to own a boat or jet skis. Like, we have that stuff. That's cool. What am I going to do with it? Right? Okay, I can meet people that can, but like hatchback, whatever's efficient. I'd love a 50 mpg performance vehicle like a Prius. Yeah. I want a performance Prius. I do, actually. That's a practical vehicle. I just don't want to bother people or hurt people, so I wind up sitting and doing absolutely nothing. And I don't want to hurt myself, Whether that's emotional or to be cold or to suffer or to lose life. And the funny thing is that I wind up losing life. Just dancing around that idea. These are my, 3 o'clock thoughts? I'm sorry. I just walked the dog because it was really late and she was making some heavy smells with her rear end. I don't know why she's had to poop a couple times, but she's a living animal. Yeah, the little boop. The boop, boop, boop. She deserves love. Natasha deserves love and appreciation because she exists. And all animals have that fear and pain. Humans have that fear and pain, the suffering and the trauma. Animals do too. We all have nervous systems. Polyvagal theory is real, yo. Gotta get that ventral chill. Doesn't mean always being happy. Just means being able to regulate in situations. Can't be bouncing around playing pong between dorsal and sympathetic. Gotta be chill. Gotta be loving. I want to be a support for the rest of my family, and I don't want to waste anyone's resources. But I do want to be helpful for people. And I also like to celebrate. And I'd like to have sex, a bunch of it, because it's human. So I guess that's the selfish part in me. I want a relationship where we explore and do all those wonderful things. Travel to different countries. Take photos. Capture video. Reminisce on the memories. Because I've lost a lot of life. I don't know. I'm at 40 minutes now. Basicals.